So let's real quickly, we'll do a little review here before we go on to looking at some examples of problems you would see these in. So the commutative property, you can change the order of the addends, or you can change the order if it's multiplication as well. 4 times 7 is the same as 7 times 4, just like in addition, 4 plus 7 is equal to 7 plus 4. So you're just changing around the order. They're moving within the community. The associative property, you can change the grouping. You can change who they are hanging out with, who they are associating with. 3 plus 7 plus 29 is the same as adding 3 plus 7 together first. This is the same with multiplication. If you were to multiply all of these together, same thing. You could multiply these. And this is really helpful to when you're solving big numbers like this, because if you can group together multiplication problems that are going to be easier to solve, it makes it to where you're not having to do like 3 double-digit multiplication problems. You can just do a simple fact like 3 times 7. We all know 3 times 7 is 21. It's a lot easier to do this fact first and multiply it by 29 than to take 7 times 29 first. So that's where these properties really come in handy and why you need to know these rules. The identity property, again, if you add 0 to a number, it does not change the number. The identity property for multiplication is multiplying it by 1. It makes it equal to itself. And the big one, the distributive property. This can combine multiplication and division. So you distribute using multiplication, a times b plus a times c. So then you are able to add these together. And then one that it doesn't talk about right here is that inverse property. And the inverse property states that if I have the number 6, the inverse of this is going to be the negative form of it, and it's going to be equal to 0. And in my multiplicative, that is a hard word to say, in that inverse, if I take 6 and I multiply it by 1 over 6, I would get this equal to 1. So that is the multiplicative inverse. I keep saying too many syllables in there. Which property is used in this equation below? So take a look at how we change from this one to this one. If it was the associative property, then my parentheses here would be grouped around different numbers. It'd be associating with different numbers. If this was the commutative property, then I would be rearranging some numbers in here, which is not what's going on. We didn't even talk about the reflexive property, so right away you could eliminate this answer. So let's take a look at the distributive property. The distributive property tells us that we are going to take this 12 and we are going to multiply it by everything inside the parentheses, which we did here. 12 times x plus 12 times 4 is 48. So my answer here is the distributive property. This, by the way, is a STAR test question. This comes straight off of a previous STAR test. So this is an example of how you would apply it in a testing situation. Same thing with this question. This is another STAR test question. This one is asking which equation shows the distributive property, which means that when we have that 4 times 3 plus 6, what we're looking for is we're looking for a problem where this 4 has multiplied everything inside of those parentheses. So it's going to look something like this, which you can see right here. Letter A shows us the distributive property. See if you can figure out what this one and this one and this one are all equal to. Pause the video for a moment and then unpause it to see if you were able to name these properties correctly. Welcome back. You can see our answer for B here is commutative. We've just moved them around. We haven't changed the groupings. 4 plus 3 is still grouped together. All we did is we moved them around within their community. We just rearranged them. So B would be the commutative property. In C, we added 0 to this. So this is our additive identity property. Looking at letter D here, we've changed how these numbers are grouped together. So this is the associative property. Which property is shown below? Hopefully you've taken a look at your answer choices and you have chosen associative because we have changed which numbers are associating with each other, which numbers are grouped together. Take a look at this property. Which property is illustrated by 2 times 2x plus 4 equal to 4x plus 8. Go ahead and take a moment, pause the video, and unpause when you've made your selection. You should have chosen the distributive property because this 2 is distributing amongst the addition part of this problem to become 4x plus 8. Which property is shown below? Pause the video and select your answer. Welcome back. You should have chosen D, the inverse property of multiplication. Again, the commutative property is when you are moving things around. The inverse property of addition is where we have A plus A negative A. We're using multiplication this time, so right away you could have eliminated that addition. Distributive property, we've had nothing to distribute, and then the associative property is where different numbers are being grouped together, which is not what is happening here. So this is our inverse property of multiplication. Which property is shown below? We have an inverse here, a positive and a negative, and this is an addition. So this is the inverse property of addition. Which property is shown below here? Go ahead and take a moment and read your choices and make a selection. This demonstrates our associative property. Again, the commutative property we would be rearranging, but we have regrouped which numbers are being multiplied together first. So this is associative. We didn't distribute anything, and we didn't even talk about transitive property. Which property is shown below? Take a moment to read your choices and pause the video when you've made your selection. This is the distributive property. This 2 is multiplying everything in the parentheses. 2 times 4 plus 2 times 6. It looks a little different because the 2 is not right next to the parentheses. It has an X in here. Generally, you won't see an X listed there because that's when you start to get them confused with variables. So this is just a unique problem. Which property is shown below? This would be the commutative property. All we did is we rearranged them, but we didn't change any groupings there. Which property is shown below? This again is the associative property. The 4 and the 8 associate here. The 3 and the 4 associate here. Thank you for taking the time to watch this makeup video. On your worksheet that goes along with this, you'll be identifying the properties just like we did in those last few examples. Make sure to print your worksheet, and you need to scan or take a picture of it and email it back to your teacher to receive credit for this makeup class. Have a great day.